scroll over here for the comments again.
You love that, eh?
Love it. Train, learn, lead, grow.
Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday again. These weeks just fly by. I feel like we were just here. Weren't we?
We were just here 1 week ago.
1 week ago. We keep saying we can't believe how fast the days go when you work at home. I don't know. I felt like when I was in the office, it's like you knew you got so much done in a day, and somehow at home it feels like it just flies much faster.
It does. It does.
But anyway, we're here for our Thursday live training. We've started digging deep on Mark's sales behaviors, and we're on behavior number 2 this week.
Sorry, I'm just keeping my comments here close by. We're done now.
If you're here with us, let us know when you hop on in, and we are happy that you're joining us. So today we're going to talk about behavior number 2, which is part of Mark's sales behavior and prospecting training. And so last week we talked about really how to research your potential customer or your prospect, find out what makes them tick, find out what their organization's all about, and how to use that to kind of open the door and start those conversations with them. And then now this week we're going to talk about really how you can dig deeper to find out what they value, what kind of what the value proposition might be for them, and how you can use what they value to really differentiate yourself, your product, your service, as a salesperson. Does that summarize it?
Pretty darn good. You've been listening.
I'm learning.
Yeah, last week really, again, last week was about getting them on the phone. It was about getting them to return the email. And it was putting in the work in advance so people understood that you understood them before you ever called them, right? And that's where people get turned off. Again, we used the Ron Tite pitch lap last week, and we help you get past that. And now in this second step, you have to assume you are talking to the person. They are engaging, and now you're having a conversation. It may happen right away from that first call when you research and connect, or they may have returned your call from your voicemail that you left from your research and connect. But here you are, you're dialoguing with a potential prospect at this point. You've stood out, you show them you understand a little bit about their business, and you've kind of given them a reason to want to talk to you. That's where we're at today.
Super. So let's say you've done your reach out, sharing the research you've done. You feel like you're really showing that you're in the know about what they're all about. You get the phone call back, which you're excited about, and now you move into kind of step number 2 of digging for what they value. So how do you start those conversations?
Yeah, so the first thing is, and we talk about this in the servant leadership training, is the core behavior of inquiry versus advocacy, right? And when people hear inquiry versus advocacy, they think, okay, well, that is just asking a bunch of questions and not telling what you're about. No, those two things go together. But it's the timing and the weight that's important. And sales professionals want to advocate all the time. Here's what we do it better than anyone else. Buy from me, buy from me, buy from me. But they don't spend enough time inquiring what the client needs and understanding what's important to them, and then advocating how they're a solution and standing out. So first thing is, as a behavior, it's not even a step, but as a behavior, you want to become adept at the art of inquiry versus advocacy and the balance. And the thing I'll leave you with is, you hear us talk a lot about paraphrasing today. I'm probably going to use that term a lot. But you want to paraphrase before you advocate. That simple trick of, hey, if I heard you, you said, that's paraphrasing. It's repeating back what the customer said when you were inquiring about what was important to them. Because now you can advocate how you can solve that problem. Now people want to hear what your solution is, because you've asked the question, you've shown you've understood and reiterated that through paraphrasing, and now you can advocate how you can provide a solution. So that's the number one behavior. The first thing you really want to figure out, and we talked a little bit about this in connecting and researching, is the value equation. And this is Richard Petty's biggest thing that he taught me in elite training camp, and Richard taught me a lot. But at MLSE, Richard took 13 of us into that room that we had to qualify and write an essay for, and it felt like good old school days to get into and get endorsed. And he spent a lot of time on the value equation. And the value equation is quality and service over price equals value. And what you need to do in this stage of the sales process is you need to ask those questions to understand what the customer thinks is quality, what they think is service, and now you can talk about your price once you've understood those two things. You want to find out what the customer values. And in this world of vision and values, and not that those things aren't important, don't get those two things confused. We're not talking about corporate values here. We're talking about how they value their money and choosing a partner and spending the corporate dollar. Richard did a really good job with us of saying, hey, listen, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, there's only so much we can charge for a Toronto Maple Leafs Platinum ticket. We're running out of that runway. We're also running out of runway on the corporate sponsorship side. There's only so much people are going to spend. You went through this with Sweets and Christie. Companies were paying $546,000 a year for Sweets. And there was this crackdown in corporate Canada on expenses of, hey, we can't be spending that on hosting clients. So you guys had to pivot, and create more value to get that same revenue. And you guys divided up quarter seasons, and you added new services and more engagement for your guests. That's an example of, we didn't move the price in theory because we just sold it to 4 people instead of 1, but you increased the quality and the service that someone was getting out of it. So you got to be able to define that, and the best way to do that is to ask open-ended questions.
Your favorite thing.
Yes. Again, back to inquiry versus advocacy.
I should also say that I'm really just in these little sessions to kind of moderate and keep Mark on track. So this is all his brainchild, his ideas, his trainings, and I just pop in where I have a thought. So if you wonder why I sit here and am not saying too much, it's because he loves to talk about this.
This is Jode's way of saying she's going to keep me to a half an hour, and not give away all my training for free, I think. Right. But I love it. I love for people to understand it a little better. And you can't grasp it without doing exercises. You need to see me do the flip charts. You need to see me give the examples. But I think you can still come to these and leave with a little bit of value of the core behaviors in the sales process. So, yeah, so you got to figure that out, and you got to ask open-ended questions. Very transparently. You've made that connection. Remember, that was last week. That was step 1. You're engaging and say, talk to me of what you look for from a service perspective in your logistics provider, right? So let's call it a trucking company. What does that look like? Oh, well, I want to know where my shipment is at all time. I've used people in the past, and the trucks are 2 hours late, and we don't know where the driver is. And okay, so if I heard you correctly, tracking your shipment at all times is really important to you. Did I hear that correct? Right? So here's an example of one thing in there, service. Okay, so if I did hear you correctly, let me talk to you about our software program that puts you at ease. We're the only company in the industry that can track your truck within 8 meters at all times. And here's the value in that is you can prepare your warehousing staff to be ready the minute it hits your door, and you get to call me if it's sitting on the highway for 3 hours. Right? And so that is just figuring out one thing in what they value from a service perspective that I've paraphrased and now shown how we can drive value. And that is how you want to structure quality and service in that dialogue before you ever talk about price. And so figure out, what are your questions to say, okay, and what does quality look like? Oh, can you give me an example of something that was great? And tell me when you've used a past provider and you felt let down from a quality, and you paraphrase back the answers and how you can help solve that problem or deliver what they expect. So those are the inquiry to advocacy come to life, inquiry versus advocacy coming to life, and paraphrasing to make sure they know you heard them and that everything you're talking about is in the context of their business, not yours.
Alrighty.
Do you disagree with
like
your
vast
sales experience?
I feel like there's also, you know how people, it's like some people learn in different ways. Some people want to be served in different ways too, right? So the only way you're going to know that is if you actually ask them, like, what are your expectations of your service provider from a service perspective? Maybe someone wants to talk to you every week. Maybe someone doesn't want to be checked in on. It's like when you go into a retail store, some people want to be greeted by the employee and have the employee shop them around the whole store. Some people are like, no, I'm good, leave me alone. Right? I want to do it on my own. So
just looking, that's the big
by asking the open-ended question, you can allow them to actually tell you what their expectations would be of you from a service perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to my retail days. Just I tease about just looking, but that was the big. You got that from every customer walking in the store. And why did you get it? Because at every store they walked into the mall, someone jumped on them in 10 feet. Mm-hmm. But the sales professional still has an obligation to see if I can help you today. Mm-hmm. And so again, back to the open-ended questions. Instead of saying, what are you looking for today? You're going to get just looking. Mm-hmm. You want to say, what specifically brought you into the store today? You might get just looking, but you may say, I'm looking at shoes. Oh, that's great. And how can I help you with that? Oh, well, I'm just going to have a look at the shoe wall. That's fantastic. How do you want to call me to attention when you need me? What does that look like? How much time should I give you to have a look at the shoe wall and come back and check in with you? Those are the type of things that are open-ended questions to get someone to engage, and that behavior shows up a little differently. I'm pulling an old retail example out of the hat. But again, to your point, I love that, like, what is your expectation in service in the experience? What does quality look like? If you can come up with 3 to 5 things in both of those, now you've got an opportunity to advocate. And the last thing I'll leave you with in regards to the value equation, right, is do your value equation before you get on the phone. Like, know how you're different or what you do really well from a quality perspective. Have 10 to 15 items listed out. It's the exercise I take all my corporate training groups through. We go through and say, okay, define for me how Nike Canada corporate stores does quality, does service. Define for me how Titanium Transportation does quality. And we go through the exercise and we debate it and we get to a list. And now they're ready when they ask the question of the client to advocate where they can solve that problem. So you got to prepare and you got to know what you do in the context of value delivery.
That's where the value of actual sales training comes in too, because a lot of companies just put people out there to make the phone calls, but they're actually not trained on what the company, has to offer, what the values are, how they can make those propositions to their clients. They're not really trained on any of that, right? But that's what you do is you break it down so they all have a succinct list they can work from.
Yeah, like there's 3 pieces to real successful sales professionals. One is they get the behaviors to understand the customer connect, right, which we talked about last week. The next one is they're really good at the art of inquiry versus advocacy, and then they understand their offering to advocate, in the context of the answers they got out of inquiry. I'll give you a perfect example. I get it all the time on LinkedIn. Hey, Mark Pettipaw, business coach. Would you like 100,000 leads for www.markpettipaw.com? Buy our list. Well, if that same organization reached out and said, hey, Mark, I see that you offer corporate training, but I also see that you offer online training and you have a book. Wow, what led you to do those 3 things? Because I love your concept of servant leadership. How are you bringing that to more people? Wow, am I glad you asked? Because my corporate business is fine. I get my corporate clients because they know me and I've cultivated this LinkedIn network for years, but I do want to bring it to more people and I'm in the online space now and I can't figure it out. Hey, let me tell you about our lead generation for online businesses. Now I'm going to have that dialogue. Mm-hmm. But if you send me a spam message that says, here's what we do you want it? You've lost the opportunity for 2 reasons. You haven't figured out what I really want from quality service for what I'm going to pay you. And 2, you're showing up the same way everybody shows up in sales. I want to add something. We're at 12:14. We're doing okay for time. And I know you're itching to talk more about sales right now.
It's all good.
When you want to talk about those open-ended questions, you want to ask what I call our inquiry level 1 and inquiry level 2 questions. And we'll get into boomerang facts here in a second. And I'll explain that concept. You should ask me, like, what's a boomerang fact? That'd be awesome.
I'm sure you'll get there all on your own.
Inquiry level one questions are open-ended questions about quality and service. So, you mentioned like, what does service look like to you? And what does quality look like for you? And tell me how you define your best partner in regards to working with them. And all those open-ended questions that'll get you what they think is important from a quality and service perspective and what they value. Those are inquiry level one questions. So you can paraphrase back and advocate them. Inquiry level two questions are the questions that you want to ask that lead to your boomerang fact. Your boomerang fact is what you do and you do differently than everyone else. Some companies have one, some companies have seven. If you have none, you got to fight the price game, and that's not too profitable. So you want some boomerang facts. I'm going to explain those in a second. But the questions you ask at the level two inquiry section are really open-ended that will steer to your boomerang fact. So let's say, let's pick a company I've worked for. Let's pick Fusion Homes from my past. Okay, hi all my Fusion homies if you're watching. One of the things I trained the team through this program was, what do we do differently than everyone else? And the answer was, well, we've won 6 Tarion Awards. And those are awards that, you get a survey as a new homeowner in Ontario. They're completely run by someone else that isn't a home builder, government endorsed body, the Tarion Warranty Corporation. And what they do is they send that survey out and they get it back. And all those people who bought from all those home building companies do the same survey and they tabulate the results and they say, this is truly the best builder for customer service. And so no company had won more than 2. And we had won 6 of the last 8 years. And so guess what one of our boomerang facts were? Well, that's great. If you spit out, hey, we won all the Tarion Awards and we're better quality than our competitor down the road, it means nothing if your customer doesn't value that. So the boomerang value question was, how important is it to you for your builder to be held accountable and deliver great service after they've got your money and you got your keys to your home? Well, that's really important. Oh, and have you heard of a Tarion Award? What's a Tarion Award? Well, let me explain, which is what I just explained. And guess what that's steering to? The boomerang fact that is, hey, when you're out there looking, by all means, there's many things that are important, but if quality is really important to you in service, here's our proof point. And we've won 6 of these awards, and no company in Ontario has won more than 2. Now we're going back, and the winners have changed, but at that point, it was a real big differentiator for Fusion. And the reason I call it a boomerang fact is just like a boomerang, when you throw it out, it comes back. So when that customer shops, and they go to the competitor down the street, and they say, how many Tarion Awards have you won? And the builder says, well, we haven't won any. And if quality is really important to them, and an objective third party has said Fusion's the best at quality, where does that customer go if they value quality as the biggest part of that value equation? They come back to you. Here's the thing about boomerangs. You got to throw them well for them to come back. If you have the technique and you throw it well, they always come back. So this is a behavior that's critical, and you got to find out what your company's boomerang fact is, which is an inquiry level.
Can you give us
question.
another example of a boomerang fact?
Sure. I'll use a logistics company that I work with.
Okay.
And I've used their name in the past, so I don't think it's a secret. But Titanium, great team. Rob and his team down there, his sales team. One of the investments that company has made is in Tesla trucks. And so when they talk to organizations after doing their research and asking open-ended questions about how they feel about environmental impact, because some organizations are very sensitive to that, and that is in their branding and everything they do, boy, when it comes to a logistics partner, that's hard to deal with because trucks are on the road. But they're one of the only companies with 50 Tesla trucks on the road.
Right.
That's a boomerang fact.
So the boomerang fact is just the real differentiator, the real differentiating factor that will allow someone to choose you over someone else if they value what that fact is about.
Anything I've created is just a catchy name for an ongoing. No, I'm just teasing. But it's what people call your USP, your unique selling proposition or position. But what's important isn't that you have the fact, it's the behavior to tie it to what the customer values. And that's what people miss. A sales professional may even know that they have won Tarion Awards at Fusion Homes. But if they don't ask the customer how important quality is, that has no importance if the customer is just worried about price. And so how do you spin the triangle to talk about something about price? Or if it's about service and they're talking about a quality issue, who cares about your boomerang fact? It's not important to me. What we need to train people on is to better understand the customer so they can position how they can help. That's the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And the differentiator now gets laid on based on the context of what the customer values. It's like when you shop for clothes online. There's an example. There's a silly example. If I assumed that we had the lowest price in the market, and I started pushing things to you saying, Jody, you know what? We've got the lowest price women's clothing in Canada. And you're like, yeah, I get that. And there are certain things that's important to me, really, but I want is fashion, I want style, and I want the latest collection. And I find value in that. I'll pay for that. My boomerang fact means nothing to you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually going to push you away.
Right.
And so it's really important that if you do inquiry versus advocacy, you understand the customer's value equation. You can match it against yours. You ask questions to define that, then paraphrase it back. Because by repeating, all you're doing is saying, you told me this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not making it up. You said this is important to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now let me advocate why I can do it. Let me give you a boomerang fact of where I stand out. Now your sale starts to come together from the perspective of the client, and you're not turning them off. I've got to check for comments because we've got one of our highest viewerships ever here. Carl Jalbert is watching. Salut mon Carl! Comment ça va?
Hi, Carl. Okay, so don't you think within an organization, you
Yes.
could have the same, all the sales people could be using the same boomerang fact about the organization.
Could be, yeah.
But it's just what will differentiate you as a salesperson is how you're able to align that with your inquiries and your open-ended questions to pull it out of the prospect.
Yeah, and for each client, it's different. And that's why, and again, one of the things I talk about in these training sessions where I deal with organizations and we go through the exercise and they're like, I don't even know if we have a boomerang fact.
Yeah.
That's okay. You just got to be crystal clear on matching what the client values and showing how you do it better than anyone else.
Right.
It doesn't have to be different if you don't have a boomerang fact. It certainly helps, but you have to have some proof points on how you do it better than anyone else in the marketplace. Like you can't go into a sports store and tell someone you got a better pair of Air Jordans. I know I keep bringing back Air Jordan examples from my old retail days. That's how old I am, but everybody's got them.
Yeah.
So what do you do differently than your competitor? Mm-hmm. Well, it might be service.
Right.
That might be your biggest thing is when people come into your store, you got better customer service than the one down the street, and you can show that and you can promote it. Or maybe you have more engagement, like you have event nights where, you bring in people from the vendor to have a meet and greet and show their latest product, even though you're selling the same product as down the street.
What if you throw in a free shoe spray?
Or you're throwing a free shoe spray. But you don't want to throw in a free shoe spray, and let me tell you why. Is a little trick from my retail background. That's one of the highest margin items for clothing retailers is the spray.
Well, everyone tries to sell you the spray.
Now, I sold a crap load. See, I almost swore, and I haven't sworn this week.
What about that concept, like adding a freebie? Like if you come with us, we'll add on XYZ for free. Is that slimy?
No, if there's a reason. So organizations will do that. They used to call them gate crashers in retail, where they had something really discounted at the front and it was to get you in the store and buy more. And here's the thing, if you're going to give something away, you're devaluing whatever that is right away. Mm-hmm. And if you start to sell on price, it's a race to the bottom. But having said that, if you have a strategic approach that says, I'm going to give you a free can of sneaker spray with every shoe over $169. And the reason is you don't want to keep getting these shoes back because people are wearing them outside, they're leaking, the soles are coming, the stitching comes apart, all those things. Then I might want to take that $6.99 can of sneaker spray, and it's probably way more than that now, that costs me $1.99, that the margins are huge, and I might want to throw in that $2 charge to cover my return risk on that more expensive shoe. So if there's a strategic approach, by all means. I'd just be careful of trying to differentiate yourself on price because only one company can win that. Like There's only one Walmart. And I had this conversation with a prospect yesterday. Canadian Tire can't be Walmart. They can't. And it's not like Canadian Tire is premium either. but they're going to lose the war on price because Walmart has more power. They have more points of distribution. They can hold their suppliers more accountable to making razor thin margins because they've got volume, and Walmart can deliver the lowest price. Canadian Tire, when they want to compete, they got to compete on brand. We're the Canadian brand. We're your local person in Wasaga Beach. We also do services that Walmart won't. So come on in and get your skate sharpened here and get your bikes tuned up. And there's more quality and service still for a lower price. And the reason they do that is only Walmart can win on price.
Right.
Only Dollarama can win on price on candy.
So you're the real differentiator that's going to
store.
make you win the contracts is quality or service. For the most part.
It's value. And what I mean is that value equation because...
Right. But if your quality and service is high enough, then they'll pay the price.
If your quality and service is high enough, you can charge more for what you're providing.
Right.
Hence, you're more profitable. But if you want to win the volume game, that's okay too, but there's usually only one winner. Because that's how you're differentiating yourself, and that's easy to compete against if I'm willing to make a little bit of money and go for the gold. But only one company usually wins that game.
So we've talked about your value equation.
Yes.
We've talked about the first part of inquiry versus advocacy. How do you inquire? Ask those open-ended questions. Figure out what the customer values. Now, what do you mean by advocacy? How do we advocate?
So, I did this in retail. I'd keep it at the counter. I'd literally do it because clients would go, oh my God, this guy's keeping notes. But even if you're not client facing, keep notes when you're doing your inquiry, okay? And so you've asked all the questions and you got a Q here and you got an S here. And here's what they value in quality and here's what they value in service. And by the way, I've got my list of quality and service. So I'm circling that and I'm circling that. And those two things go together. And now it's time to advocate. Before I advocate, I'm going to paraphrase. Here's what I heard from you. The quality of your home was the most important thing in your buying decision. Did I hear that correct? Yeah. Okay, great. The other thing I heard was, you don't want to wait a long time if you've got a leak or something's going on in your home. You want to get it serviced quickly. Did I hear that correct? Yeah, urgency. Gotcha. Okay, great. And the last thing that really stood out of all the things that you've heard from me, the third most important thing was not only how well the home was built, but how quickly it was going to close and that it was going to close on time. Correct? Yeah. Okay. So that's service too. And okay, on time. All right. Can I talk to you a little bit about what we do? Because there's lots of options out there in regards to that. From a quality perspective, as I mentioned, those Terrion Awards, we've won the most in Ontario, and that's an independent council. So that is not me telling you we're great. That's the home buyer telling you we've done a great job. From a service perspective, I know you want urgency. Let me tell you about our emergency program for service. In after sales service, we do a 30-day review. So you'll give us your list of things and deficiencies, and hopefully there's not many because we usually close deficiency free. But if they are, we usually come back between 30 and 60 days and fix those things. Having said that, the following items qualify as emergency items. You have a leak, you have a crack, we're going to do all those things. And then the last thing I heard was, I don't want to be sitting around waiting for my home to close if you gave me a closing date. We haven't missed a closing date in 10 years. Okay, and so now I've got all the quality and service, and now I'm advocating because I paraphrased first. If I heard you correctly, you said, not me, you, don't put your finger in, don't say you, that's rude, but you said, and you said, and you said, and now here's how we do it, and we do it. And by the way, those Terrion Awards were the only one who's won 6, and there's my boomerang fact. And now I've advocated in the context of quality and service and what the customer values, and now I'm closing.
So you have to take what the customer values and kind of spin it into your kind of boomerang facts that share your differentiating factors, and that's you advocating for your own whatever it is.
Yeah, but the problem is salespeople I taught the connecting in the first one, and we use these tools almost micro, right, to stand out because you researched and you found out about it. They didn't tell you, and that's what got you on the phone. Mm-hmm. But sales professionals want to friggin' advocate all the time. Mm-hmm. And guess what we do? Now we have CRM that sends out automated emails, and we have LinkedIn, and it makes it easier to do that to 10,000 people faster. And we don't understand why people aren't calling us back. You don't want to be treated that way. just a little more work to do inquiry versus advocacy and balance the two. That people ask me like, what's your biggest tip? That is my biggest tip. I talked about Denise on the last one, and I've seen it in sales, like Glenn, who's a manager, what he does with his team. And like, they're really good at engaging with the client and finding out about them. Mm-hmm. They don't even think about what they're going to sell them until they know they need anything. And once they do, it's an easy close.
Well, I see it a lot I've worked a lot in sponsorship sales. My last job was huge around sponsorship sales, donor relations and things like that. So it's like, well, those are two different things, but I did donor relations and sponsorship sales. So for donor relations, when you're working for a not-for-profit, you can't just go in and say, we need support.
Yeah, give us some money.
Give me your money. You have to invest in creating that relationship. What kind of causes do you like giving back to? Why do you feel that it's necessary to give back in your community? What else do you do to serve others? What organizations are you involved with? And then you can take that back and spin it around on, okay, here's, why I specifically think that XYZ program could use your support. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
In sponsorship sales, we spend a lot of time doing a beautiful sponsorship package with all our different levels and price thresholds and all the value that you get for each price of your sponsorship. But if you just boom those out over email to a bunch of companies, here we're having this event, we're looking for sponsors, here's our package, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah.
Right? To me, it's like, I need to get that person on the phone. I need to say, what is your organization, what causes is your organization aligning themselves with? Like, I'm working on an event right now for International Women's Day. So I need to find sponsors who align themselves with women's issues, gender equity, things like that. And there are a lot of organizations out there who are working to create an equal workplace, for men and women, etc. But I have to do that research to know who those organizations are before I get on the phone with them, rather than just shooting out these sponsorship packages. And so that's what's helped me be successful in selling the sponsorship for this event, because I've specifically gone to organizations that I know align themselves with the issue I'm trying to, make this event to advocate for. So
yeah,
I've seen it a lot and practiced it myself. I just haven't ever broken it down in this exact method.
Yeah, it's a process that I didn't make up. Well, I guess I made up my process in my training. Yes, I did. But it's just things I've observed in other people that are really successful at it.
Right. But I've never gone through like specific sales training before. Right. It's been like,
but 99% of sales professionals haven't.
Sell thousands of dollars in sponsorship for this event.
Ring.
Okay. I mean, I'm a relationship builder. I love doing that stuff. And so
but those are the best people at sales.
That's right. But I just kind of dove in and did it. But I feel like if I had this kind of defined process step by step in front of me, if I had been trained on it to learn how to, really inquire, to really be able to differentiate myself, then maybe that would have helped me along the way.
I have the exact example you have. I'll say it quickly. We'll run a little bit over this week. But like in sales, you have to, the sales professionals do the best, care about the customer's sales more than their own. Mm-hmm. And you have to start from there. You can't be thinking, oh my God, I got to hit my quota. I got to be able to hit my number. You got to be thinking, okay, how do I figure out this customer's business so I can turn the dial for them? If you do that, in turn, your sales will grow. Two quick things before I give that example, and then we can maybe wrap up if you want. But Derek Miller, thanks, buddy. Yeah, I love that example because it's a real one, and that client is one of my favorites. Jody, you mentioned the sponsorship thing. When I was VP of Sales and Marketing with a large Canadian company, points of distribution across the country, one of the empowerments I had was to do a sponsorship deal if it made sense. And I was given a budget close to $1 million to do a sponsorship deal. And an organization came in and they pitched me on everything they do, right? So here's your rink boards. Here's how many commercials that might see your rink board ad. We're going to give you this many tickets to host your guests. And it wasn't a bad pitch. But the reality, had they looked into my business at all, my business, the family's business, but I was representing, and said, hold on a second, they're B2B. Mm-hmm. And they're across the entire country. And they really only have so many points of distribution in downtown Toronto, was this sports property. How do I find more value, and how do I position the deck, the offering, in regards to their business? They would have reverse engineered it and said, hey, you know what? Some of the things we can do for you are in arena activation. So you'll be able to bring your latest, greatest printing product, and we'll put up a table and we'll be able to do that. And I see that you won't get as much value out of the hosting because you only have 15% of your branches here. So we'll pull a little bit of that back and we'll add a little bit more of this and customize their approach in the package. I could have spent $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to go back to the ownership group and said, well, you know what? You're going to be attached to this great brand that everybody watches on Saturday night. And we're going to get a bunch of tickets to host a bunch of our clients. And not that that's not important. That company has no problem selling corporate sponsorships, just to be clear. But the relatable point I'm trying to say is they might have been able to land our business. They might have been able to land our business if they could have aligned the package with what we wanted. And it was all in that offering. It was just about tweaking it. And they went in a different direction. And after I left the organization 2 years later, they did a deal with a CFL team that gave them all those things. Mm-hmm. They became the official printer of the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And they did in-game, little sticks with the logos on it that they printed up to show their capabilities. And it wasn't about the great viewership that TSN has for those games. It had nothing to do with that. It was about getting their product into people's hands because they had a couple branches out that way. And they had the money to spend. So again, it's about determining what your client values so you can then show what you can position in your value. I hope that makes a lot of sense. But inquiry versus advocacy, you put those things together. Hey, stocks, you put those things together and that really works. So that's a lot today.
Let us know in the comments if you have any specific questions. If you're watching this back on replay, we can still see the comments, I think,
yep.
when you comment. If you have a specific scenario or an example that you want Mark's opinion on, I'm sure he'd be happy to help you out in that regard. Yeah, and that's all for this week, I guess.
Can we do what Griffin does with his YouTube channel? Okay, guys, make sure you comment below and hit subscribe.
No. Like and subscribe, share this video with a friend.
Right, like and subscribe, share this video with a friend.
Our 9-year-old has a YouTube channel and it's quite entertaining.
Yes.
Anyway.
If you want to watch a 9-year-old play Fortnite over and over again.
The other thing actually I should ask, if you've made it this far with us, is we've been doing these, now our dogs are going crazy, time to go. We've been doing these on Thursdays at lunchtime, thinking that, maybe it would be a good time for people to tune in while they're taking a quick lunch break. But if you think there's a better time, that more of you would be able to tune in live, let us know. Like, we could be doing these at the end of the day. We can do them in the evening. We just thought it might be a good midday break. And I know a lot of people are catching them on the replay. So if you're finding them valuable, but you'd like to be able to tune in live, let us know if there's a better time for these things. We're kind of guessing and testing as we go here.
Yeah, and we're just going to keep doing them. Like whether you watch them or not. But honestly, it's just like, it's going to land on the person that it's going to help. And that's why we're doing it. And so would it be nice to have a bunch of viewers because we do it at the right time? Of course it would. But I know those of you are finding value in it. It's helping your business. So come on by. And
cool. People come back to us after the fact. Watch the video. Loved it. XYZ. It's just during this time.
Views will come. We got to keep providing value. Views will come.
That's we're just going to show up consistently and see what happens. Thanks for tuning in. Next week we'll talk about sales behavior number 3. What is that?
Oh, gaining commitment to clarify needs. So this is where we go from all this great dialogue about finding out their value equation, having connected, and now we're getting into the point where we're trying to close the sale and do a proposal. So if that's in the B2B, it's how we set up a contract and propose a service offering. If that's in the B2C space, it's actually asking for the transaction and positioning what they're going to get for what they're going to pay. A little bit closer to the final close. It's the soft close. Now we have
to actually make the ask. That's what we're doing.
Yep. We're going to start to make the ask. We want the commitment to make the ask.
Okay.
So in some businesses, that looks like, hey, so can I come into your office next Thursday and take you through a proposal?
Are you open to a conversation about blah, blah, blah?
We've shown we're a match. Let's get serious about this and let's put something on paper. That's what's coming next week. La semaine prochaine, mon Cal!
See you next Thursday. Bye.